They spit in your food. 4 words, scrawled on a napkin by a trembling hand. 4 words that stopped a billionaire black CEO mid-bite in a restaurant he secretly owned. What began as a quiet dinner in Charleston turned into a shocking exposé of racism, corruption, and courage, one that would bring down an entire system and rebuild it from the ground up. This isn't just a story about food, it's a story about justice, and it all started with a folded napkin. Those 4 words, scribbled hastily on a folded linen napkin, hit harder than any headline. They stopped billionaire CEO Malcolm DeVere mid-bite, freezing the fork just inches from his mouth. For a man who had survived boardroom betrayals and market crashes, this was different. This wasn't business. This was personal. And it was about to explode into a black story that would shake an entire industry. Malcolm didn't come to the cradle for steak. He came undercover, dressed in a plain navy hoodie and beat-up sneakers, to investigate whispers he couldn't ignore. A high-end restaurant he quietly owned in Charleston, South Carolina, had been flagged in an anonymous letter for racially biased service and suspicious kitchen practices. He wanted to see for himself, alone. No entourage, no special treatment. From the moment he walked in, it was clear the rumors weren't just rumors. He was seated by the restroom, ignored for 10 full minutes. The server skipped his table entirely. And now this, a note from a waitress with eyes full of quiet fear and shoes worn to the bone. Her name was Naomi. She didn't ask for help. She just told the truth. And that truth cracked the mask off a polished, poisonous system. This isn't just a story about food, it's about courage, about what happens when someone risks everything to do what's right. It's about the hidden layers of racism that still haunt places of privilege and how one woman's bravery forced a reckoning. This is a black story. And if you've ever wondered how justice really starts, this is it. Before we go any further, take a second to like this video and subscribe for more true stories that matter. Stories that stir the soul and challenge the status quo. Now breathe deep, because the next 10 minutes will change the way you see power, race, and what happens when a simple napkin turns into a weapon of truth. Malcolm DeVere was a man who turned silence into strategy. At 46, he had become one of the most respected black CEOs in America. A tech prodigy turned investor, he had built his billion-dollar empire not just through brilliance, but through precision. Every word he spoke was measured. Every deal he made was calculated. He didn't believe in luck. He believed in data, discipline, and dignity. But even data couldn't prepare him for the note Naomi had left under his coffee cup. Long before that night, Malcolm knew the cost of being underestimated. Raised by his grandmother in a small Alabama town, he'd watched his mother scrub floors so her son could wear a shirt without holes to school. His first computer was from a church donation bin. His first investment, a scholarship fund he built at age 24 from his garage startup's first big IPO. But success doesn't erase memory. It just buries it deeper. On paper, he was now the founder of Darrow Capital Holdings, with interests in clean energy, fintech, and luxury hospitality. He drove a black Tesla Model S, sat on 5 corporate boards, and lived in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. But behind closed doors, he was still that kid who learned to tie a tie from a YouTube video before his first investor pitch. He didn't dress flashy. No gold watches, no designer shoes. Malcolm understood how quickly people judged a black man by what he wore before they ever listened to what he said. So when that anonymous letter landed on his desk 2 weeks earlier, claiming one of his flagship restaurants was mistreating black customers and employees, he didn't send a lawyer or a PR team. He bought a Greyhound ticket, threw on a hoodie, and walked into the fire himself. No one recognized him when he walked into the cradle that night, and that was exactly the point. Sometimes to see the truth, you have to disappear inside it. That's what Malcolm had learned. He wasn't just a CEO. He was a mirror. And this time, he wanted the system to see itself, raw, unfiltered, and up close. Because real leadership isn't about being seen. It's about seeing what no one else wants to look at. The Cradle was the kind of restaurant that made people lower their voices when they walked in. Tucked inside a restored historic mansion in downtown Charleston, it oozed Southern charm and exclusivity. Velvet drapes, gold-rimmed glassware, candlelight that made everyone look 10% more important. You didn't come here just to eat. You came to be seen. The walls were lined with portraits of Confederate generals, conveniently unlabeled, as if history could be softened by mood lighting. The name, The Cradle, was a nod to Charleston's past. The cradle of Southern elegance, as their website proudly proclaimed. But to Malcolm, even before stepping foot inside, the name echoed something else, something darker, the cradle of exclusion, of control. From the moment he entered, the tone was set. The hostess, a young white woman with perfect posture and a clipboard smile, scanned his clothes like they were a threat. She didn't recognize him. That was the plan. He had chosen a plain zip-up hoodie, dark jeans, and off-brand sneakers. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, her voice flat. "No," Malcolm said, calm as ever. She exhaled slowly, performing annoyance like it was part of her job. "We're fully booked tonight, sir. But I suppose we can seat you at the bar or near the kitchen entrance. Would that be acceptable?" Malcolm nodded. "Sure, that works." He followed her through the grand dining room, passing tables filled with white diners in suits and designer dresses. Not a single black face in sight, except the staff. That part hadn't changed since the 1800s. She led him to a table by the bow service doors where the smell of bleach drifted in every time they swung open. No candle, no smile, just a menu slapped down like a warning. Malcolm sat quietly, scanning the room. The waitstaff smiled brighter at the tables with Rolexes and country club memberships. The manager, a middle-aged white man with slicked back hair, made his rounds like a politician at a fundraiser, shaking hands, laughing too loud. But his eyes passed over Malcolm like he wasn't there. The cradle wasn't broken. It was functioning exactly as it was designed to. And Malcolm, quietly watching, saw it for what it was. Not a restaurant, a performance, a place where appearances mattered more than people, where the past dressed itself up in fine linen and still called itself tradition. Naomi Cole moved like someone who had learned long ago not to make noise when she walked. At 25, she carried herself with the quiet grace of someone who had seen more than her share of hard days. She wasn't loud, she wasn't flashy, but there was something sharp behind her soft eyes, like a blade wrapped in velvet. She had once dreamed of becoming a civil rights lawyer. She was halfway through her law degree at Howard when life cracked wide open. Her mother's cancer diagnosis came with no warning and even less mercy. Bills piled up faster than her scholarships could cover, so she left school, packed up her life in a single suitcase, moved back to Charleston, and took the first job that would hire her without a question. That job was at the Cradle. The money was decent for a service job, but the atmosphere was suffocating. Naomi was the only black waitress on staff. Management didn't say it out loud, but she could feel it in the way they scheduled her. Always on double shifts, always stuck with the least desirable tables, and somehow always blamed when something went wrong. She wore a smile like armor, called every table sir or ma'am. She poured wine, cleared plates, and swallowed her pride daily. But even armor wears thin. It was the way the manager, Mr. Harlan, looked at her like she was barely worth his time. The way the other servers laughed when she got stiffed on tips. The way the chef once joked about sending the special to the black tables. She never laughed. She just filed it away. She wasn't weak. She was watching, waiting, surviving. But tonight felt different. The man at table 14 didn't fit the usual mold. He didn't wear a Rolex or bark orders. He just sat there, silent, observant, and oddly calm. When she greeted him, he looked her in the eye. Really looked, like he saw her, like he noticed. That moment, small as it was, shook something loose inside her. Because Naomi wasn't just a waitress, she was a witness to every quiet injustice, every whispered slur, every rule that changed depending on who walked through the door. And tonight, she was done watching. Tonight, she was going to act, even if it cost her everything. The presidential prime was not just a steak, it was a spectacle. 48 ounces of bone-in Wagyu beef, dry-aged for 90 days, finished with a rosemary-smoked dome lifted tableside by a gloved server. It came with a foie gras buttermilk, truffle potato tower, and a price tag of $700. A dish meant for show, not soul. When Malcolm ordered it, Naomi blinked twice. "You'd like the presidential prime?" she repeated, her voice steady but her stomach tightening. He nodded, calm as a lake. Medium rare, and a glass of the 2005 Staglin Cabernet. Another $200 decision. Naomi had taken orders for that dish a dozen times, always from hedge fund, managers, politicians, influencers with gold cards. Never from someone in sneakers and a hoodie. Never from someone who sat at the table by the swinging kitchen doors. She felt eyes on her. Across the dining room, Mr. Harlan stood with his arms folded, watching her like a hawk with a clipboard. She knew what he was thinking, that she was wasting time, that a man who looked like that couldn't afford a steak like this, that if it went unpaid, the blame would fall on her. She hesitated just a second too long. "Is that a problem?" Malcolm asked gently, but with a sharpness beneath it. "No, sir," she said quickly. "Coming right up." She turned on her heel and headed for the POS terminal, her heart thudding against her ribs. Every server knew the rules. If a customer looked questionable and ordered an expensive meal, management expected a credit card before the kitchen fired it. No exceptions. But Naomi didn't do that. She keyed in the order like it was any other. And when the screen flashed red, requiring manager approval, she hit override and swiped her own ID. She'd just taken responsibility for a $700 steak and a wine pairing on a gut instinct. Behind her, Mr. Harlan's voice boomed through the hallway. "Did he pay up front?" "No, sir," she replied without turning around. "Then you better pray he does," he growled. But Naomi wasn't praying. She was planning, because maybe, just maybe, this man wasn't here to be served. Maybe he was here to see. And if he was about to see everything. Naomi had watched a lot of things happen in that kitchen, but what she saw tonight shattered the last sliver of silence she had been holding on to. As the presidential prime was prepped, she noticed Chef Rourke, known more for his attitude than his culinary talent, lean over the sizzling steak with a twisted grin. Then came the act, subtle, quick, but unmistakable. He spat right on the steak and turned it over like nothing happened. Sous Chef Benton laughed. Naomi froze. Her first instinct was denial. Maybe it was an accident, maybe she didn't see what she thought she saw. But the laughter told the truth. This wasn't new. This was normal. And the steak was already plated. The rage bubbled under her skin, hot and sharp, but she couldn't scream. Couldn't make a scene. Not yet. She looked toward the dining room and saw Malcolm, still calm, still watching. The man who didn't belong, who ordered like he did. They didn't know who he was, but she was starting to suspect. And that changed everything. She had seconds to decide. Say nothing and serve a contaminated meal to a man who might hold the keys to this place's future, or take a risk that could end her job on the spot. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the service pen she always carried, snatched a fresh linen napkin from the rack. Her hands trembled as she wrote, the ink skipping across the fine thread. "They spit in your food. This place is not safe. Ask to see the kitchen cameras. No name, no signature, just truth folded tight." She slid it into her pocket as the steak was handed to her under a silver dome. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as she walked the plate across the dining room. Malcolm looked up as she approached. With practiced grace, she placed the plate before him, lifted the dome, and said softly, "Enjoy your meal, sir." He nodded. Then, as she cleared the empty bread plate with her right hand, her left slipped the napkin just under the corner of his place setting. A second later, she was gone. No words, no eye contact, just the quiet hope that the man at table 14 would know how to read a whisper written in cloth. Malcolm sat still for a long moment, staring at the folded napkin like it was a live wire. He hadn't touched the steak, hadn't even lifted his knife. Something in Naomi's eyes had told him to wait. She hadn't spoken it, but the urgency was written all over her posture, her breath, the slight tremor in her fingers. He reached forward slowly, carefully, and slid the napkin into his palm, unfolding it. The words stared back at him, stark, uneven, desperate. "They spit in your food. This place is not safe. Ask to see the kitchen cameras." His jaw locked. Every muscle in his face went stone still. It wasn't the spit that got to him. He had eaten far worse things in his years of traveling incognito, testing systems, testing people. No. What made his pulse spike was the phrase, "This place is not safe." That was broader. That was systemic. That was rot from the root. And Naomi? She wasn't just trying to protect him. She was sounding an alarm. Malcolm folded the napkin once more, slipped it into the inside pocket of his hoodie, and pushed the plate away. He didn't make a scene, didn't call anyone over, not yet. He reached for his phone, an older model burner he used on these kinds of trips, and opened a secure app. A few taps later, a message was sent to his chief of security in New York. Red flag at the cradle. Pull kitchen camera backups for tonight. Cross-check staff records. Quiet, fast, full report. Then he stood. Across the room, the manager, Mr. Harlan, noticed. His eyes narrowed as Malcolm approached. "Is everything all right, sir?" Harlan asked, smiling wide but scanning for a tip. Malcolm's voice was calm, but cold. "I'd like to speak to you privately. About the meal." "Of course," Harlan said, gesturing toward a hallway lined with framed awards and fake certificates. Inside the office, Malcolm didn't sit. He let Mr. Harlan talk first, some polished speech about guest experience and presentation excellence. It was all white noise. Finally, Malcolm cut in. "I'd like to see your kitchen cameras, right now." Harlan's smile faltered. "I beg your pardon?" "You heard me." And in that moment, something changed behind Malcolm's eyes. The mask came off. The CEO had arrived, and he was done pretending. Harlan hesitated just long enough to confirm what Malcolm already suspected. "The kitchen cameras," Harlan repeated, stalling. "Those are mainly for inventory control, not guest service concerns." Malcolm didn't blink. "That's fine. Let's start with tonight's footage, specifically around the time my steak was prepared." Harlan shifted in his chair. "I'd have to get approval. Our system archives only in 30-minute blocks. Also, some feeds loop automatically if the memory fills. So, unfortunately, we may not have—" "Cut the story," Malcolm interrupted, his voice low and razor-sharp. Harlan looked up, caught off guard by the sudden shift in tone. "I'm giving you one chance to do this clean," Malcolm continued. "You're either the guy who helped uncover a problem in his house, or you're the guy who buried it." Harlan's face paled. Still, he tried one last deflection. "Sir, if I may ask, who exactly are you?" Malcolm leaned in, just enough for his words to land like a weight. "I'm the man who signs your checks, and if I see one more lie fall out of your mouth, you won't have another one to cash." Harlan's mouth opened, then closed. He stood, flustered, and moved to the corner cabinet. He fumbled with a key, pulled out a dusty drive, attached it to the monitor, and began scrolling through fragmented footage. The moment the prep station came into view, Malcolm's arms crossed. Harlan clicked forward. Then, abruptly, a jump. A glitch? No, not a glitch. A clean cut. Footage skipped exactly 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Right when Naomi would have been waiting for the order. Right when the steak was plated. Harlan pretended to tap again, but Malcolm stopped him with a single word. Enough. Outside the office door, the noise of the restaurant continued. Forks clinking, wine pouring, laughter rising and falling in waves. Inside, the silence was surgical. Malcolm pulled out his phone, fired off a second message. Partial footage, possible tampering. Flag Mr. Harlan. Interview staff. Preserve all files. He slipped the phone back in his pocket and turned to the man who was now visibly sweating behind the desk. "You're done for tonight," Malcolm said. "Walk me out, then go home, and I strongly suggest you call a lawyer." Mr. Harlan stood frozen. He had no idea just how deep the storm was going to get. But the first hinge had turned and the door was no longer shut. The drive back to his hotel felt longer than it was. Malcolm didn't turn on the radio. He didn't need music. He needed silence. He needed focus. By the time he reached his suite, his security team had already responded. They'd pulled back up. Feeds from the cloud servers. Raw, uncut, untouched by any local interference. What Mr. Harlan had tried to hide was now laid bare, frame by ugly frame. Malcolm poured himself a glass of water, sat down at his desk, and opened the file. There it was, time-stamped, crystal clear. Chef Rourke leaning over the presidential prime. He wasn't rushed, he wasn't distracted, he did it with full intent. A spit, then a smile. Then he turned to sous chef Benton, who laughed and nodded. The audio was faint, but just loud enough to catch it. "That's what you get for acting like you belong here." Malcolm leaned back in his chair. He felt no shock, no outrage, only cold clarity. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of bad judgment. It was a culture, a quiet, ugly system built to humiliate people like him the second they didn't follow the script. Worse, the video logs showed this wasn't the first time. Earlier footage from the same week revealed another instance. A black couple seated at the back corner, their plate arriving nearly 30 minutes late. Behind the scenes, the kitchen laughed. Chef Rourke tossed a steak on the floor before throwing it back on the grill. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was policy in disguise. Malcolm clicked save and encrypted the files into 2 separate servers, one with his legal team, the other with the head of public relations. The message he included was simple: full internal review, staff interviews, emergency compliance training. Do not breathe a word until I say go. He stared out the window, the Charleston skyline twinkling beyond the glass. They had tried to humiliate him. They had failed. What they had done instead was expose a sickness that had gone unchecked for too long. And now the story was no longer about steak. It was about justice. It was about change. And someone was going to answer for it. On camera, under oath, and without warning. The next morning, Naomi showed up to work exhausted. She hadn't slept. Not really. Not after what she had done. Not after what she had seen. Every moment since slipping that napkin had been a blur of second-guessing and dread. She kept waiting for the call, the text, the confrontation, something. But when she walked through the back door of the cradle, no one said a word, no icy glares, no knowing smirks, nothing. Until the hostess whispered, "Mr. Harlan's office." "Now." Naomi froze. She didn't even bother clocking in, just turned, straightened her apron, and walked the long hallway toward the manager's door. She expected Harlan, maybe even the head of HR. Worst case scenario, security. What she didn't expect was him, Malcolm, still in that same hoodie, still calm, but this time he was standing. The air in the room shifted. "Naomi Cole," he said, motioning for her to sit. She didn't. "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." He held up a hand. "You should have," Malcolm said. "And you did." Her heart thudded. "Am I being fired?" He shook his head. "Not by me." Naomi blinked. "I own this place," he said, voice low. "The building, the brand, the people who run it. Well, they answer to me." Her legs gave out. She sat. "I reviewed the footage," he continued. "I've seen what happened in that kitchen. I've seen what's been happening here for months, maybe years." Naomi looked down. "I didn't know who else to tell." "And you didn't have to," Malcolm replied. "You did more than most people ever would." He took a breath. "So, here's the truth. I can have this entire place shut down today. I can fire everyone, rebrand the business, start fresh, and I will. But before I do that, I need one thing from you." Naomi looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "What?" "A choice," he said. "You can walk away quietly. I'll make sure you're taken care of. A scholarship, a new job, whatever you need." She stared at him. "Or," Malcolm continued, "you can stay. Help me rebuild this place from the inside, from scratch, as the new director of ethics and culture." Silence stretched between them. Naomi's voice shook. "You really trust me with that?" Malcolm nodded. "I already did. You just didn't know it yet." And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, Naomi breathed without fear. The next 24 hours moved fast. By noon, the Cradle was no longer a restaurant. It was a crime scene in a tuxedo. Malcolm moved with precision. Quiet calls, ironclad coordination. His legal team flew in from New York. His PR team was already drafting the statement. But he wasn't hiding behind prepared remarks. Not this time. At exactly 12:30 p.m., 2 unmarked SUVs pulled up outside the front entrance. The lunch crowd had just begun trickling in. Men in pressed suits, women in pearls and pastel blazers, when the doors opened and 2 plain-clothes federal agents stepped inside. They didn't shout. They didn't need to. They went straight for the kitchen. Chef Rourke didn't even make it to the back exit. He was escorted out the front door, still wearing his stained apron. Sous Chef Benton followed. Then Mr. Harlan. 3 arrests. 1 day. No negotiations. The staff was stunned. Some frozen, some quietly clapping. A few just watched, mouths open, as the men they once feared were walked out like thieves. Outside, Malcolm stepped up to the podium, now positioned on the front steps. Reporters were already gathering. Mics pointed, cameras rolling. He didn't speak with fury. He spoke with fact. "Yesterday, I entered this building as a customer. Today, I stand here as its owner. And what I saw inside this restaurant, what I uncovered, does not reflect the values of DeVere Holdings or this community." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. "This was not a bad apple. It was a broken tree, and we're cutting it down." He then gestured toward Naomi, who stood quietly to his right in a tailored navy blouse and slacks. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. But she stood tall. "This woman," Malcolm said, "showed more integrity in one night than most executives do in a career. She is the reason this truth came to light, and she is the reason this place has a future." Naomi's throat tightened. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was real. It was earned. Malcolm finished with one final statement, short and sharp. "We're not canceling the Cradle. We're rebuilding it from the inside. And this time, it's going to serve more than just food. It's going to serve justice. No script, no spin, just truth on full display." Naomi had never worn a suit jacket that cost more than her rent, until now. 2 weeks after the arrests, the Cradle remained closed to the public, but the lights inside were on. The kitchen had been gutted, the walls repainted, the uniforms redesigned, the Confederate portraits gone. replaced with framed images of Charleston's unsung Black pioneers, chefs, artists, community leaders. And at the center of it all, Naomi Cole sat at her new desk in an office that used to belong to Mr. Harlan. She still wasn't used to the title, Director of Ethics and Culture. It sounded corporate, heavy, but Malcolm had insisted it meant more than policy. It meant presence. She wasn't just there to sign papers or attend ribbon cuttings. She was there to rebuild trust from the inside out. Her first day in the role, she started with a staff-wide meeting. No suits, no scripts, just a circle of chairs in the dining room. Some people couldn't look her in the eye. A few still whispered behind her back, but most listened. She told them what happened, not with shame, but with strength. She explained why the culture failed, why silence is never neutral, and how they were all going to do better, together. She created a system for anonymous reporting, rolled out mandatory bias training, held weekly feedback sessions, hired new managers, people who looked like the community they served. She also did something unexpected. She went back to school. Malcolm had offered to cover her tuition if she ever wanted to finish her law degree, and she said yes, part-time, nights, and weekends, because justice didn't stop at one restaurant. And yet Naomi didn't walk like a student anymore. She walked like someone who had been through the fire and come out clear. People started to ask her questions, real ones, not just about policy, about belonging, about dignity, about how to speak up when it's scary. And every time someone asked, she told the same story about a folded napkin, a risk, a man who listened, and a job that was never just about tips. It was about truth. Naomi Cole was no longer a server. She was serving something far more important now, and the world was finally ready to hear her voice. It wasn't a press conference that changed the cradle. It wasn't the police, or the lawsuits, or the headlines. It was a napkin, folded in half, written in haste, delivered in silence. That's all it took to expose a system of quiet cruelty, a culture hiding behind linen tablecloths and curated wine lists. One simple act of courage lit a match in a room soaked in gasoline. And the fire didn't destroy everything. It revealed what was already rotting. The lesson here isn't just about restaurants or management. It's about everyday people in quiet jobs doing extraordinary things. Naomi didn't have power. She didn't have a title, but she had clarity. She saw something wrong, and instead of looking away, she acted. She didn't scream. She didn't protest. She wrote the truth and passed it to someone who would listen. And that's the heart of this Black story. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't grand or loud. It's the decision to risk your safety, your paycheck, your future, to protect something bigger than yourself. And it's the responsibility of those in power to recognize that bravery and do something with it. Malcolm DeVere did. And because of that, an empire didn't crumble. It evolved. So here's the question for you. What injustice have you seen and stayed quiet about? And more importantly, what might change if you spoke up? If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that integrity still matters, that courage is contagious. And if you want more stories like this, real ones, raw ones, the kind they don't put in textbooks, subscribe. Because sometimes it's not the big speeches or the bold protests that shift the world. Sometimes it's just a napkin and someone brave enough to write the truth on it.